it's Jann with What You Make It, and I am here with a new series to share. I'm calling it From Kit to Completed, because I don't know if you're like me, but I have a few kits that I need to actually begin using. So I thought I would share my January Cocoa Daisy kit and show you how I put it to use. So the first thing that I do, obviously, I open it up and I just get to ooh and ah over everything. Now I'm going to save my the brown bag for putting things back in. One of the first things that I do is I take out all the little bits and pieces, because those in and of themselves can kind of inspire me. And that is some shadow ink from Prima, and it came with one of the Dear Lizzie stamps and some doilies and some great little labels to use. I just put them all over here in a little tray or a dish, and for as long as I'm working on out of this kit, I leave them together. Really do like Cocoa Daisy kits. They give you such a variety of things to work with. You almost always have some great alphabets, a stamp set, lots of fun little bits and pieces, and sometimes those bits and pieces are just the thing that you need, or they will remind you of something that you already have. Now I'm going to tell you as we go along kind of what my process is. Right now I'm just working my way through, seeing what all is in there, beginning to get a feeling for how I'm going to be inspired. Loved those little tags that we got. If I am using a kit for a design team project, I limit myself from using really pretty much anything other than just what is in the kit. But when I'm using a kit for my own personal storytelling, art, scrapbooking, mini album making, I use it as a jumping off point. And so this particular series that I'm going to do will be showing you kind of the process of working through a kit. I'm going to bring in some things from my own stash, but I'm always going to go back to the papers that I found in here. There were some great papers in here, some a little vintagey, like this one. I'm thinking I may actually use that for some old photographs. They usually have some cardstock, and I use those to kind of add to from my cardstock stash. There were I believe basic gray papers and mostly October Afternoon. Great papers. Now the next thing that I do is I pull out several photographs that I've been wanting to scrap, and I will put them back into the brown bag with the leftover scraps, so that the next time they're there for me to pull out. Now I've gone through and I've picked several of the patterns. I really liked this one that had kind of this vintage feel to it, and then the one that was the wedding ring quilt kind of thing, because it had some yellows in it. I decided to pull out the yellow cardstock, and I'm actually going to use both sides of this paper. I've also pulled out a piece of craft cardstock, because this particular layout is going in an album where all the background pages are craft. I've pulled out a couple of other things. This cherry washi tape from October Afternoon, because I'm planning on using that cherry paper, and I think that'll be a nice little touch. And then I've pulled out a couple of others that are kind of in this pink and teal color family, because I think that's the direction it's going to go. And I have some thins and some thicks. Now, using the sequin waste, some people call it punchinella. There's so many things you can do with it. I'm going to use it to mask and do some spraying with some, I believe this color is Cosmos from Tattered Angels. It has both a pink glimmer to it, and the liquid itself is is pink. And I'm beginning just to kind of make a background, keeping in mind the other things in this album that it's going to be near. I'm just kind of creating a little bit of a feel where it's cohesive when it gets into the album. Now I've started with a larger portion, and of the blue paper. I think that's going to be my vertical piece. But then as I started looking at this wedding ring quilt album quilt paper, I decided that I wanted to maybe use it almost as a mat. I also realized I like visual texture, and so I've pulled out a piece of craft core cardstock, and it's not pink enough to really work with the colors. So I'm going to use the raspberry distress ink, and I'm going to add some additional pink to it and then dry it off. And it still wasn't quite as pink as I wanted. So I just put some of the ink directly on to my craft mat, sprayed some of that bright pink, Cosmos pink Tattered Angels, and then I'm using some white distress stain to kind of marbleize it. And if you're really careful and squeeze and pick up, you're not going to contaminate the dabber of your distress stain. And you can see here that it changes the feel of that immensely. And then I dried it and cut it down. Now I'm saving a piece of it. You're going to see that I went ahead and did some additional embossing with one of the texture fades. I'm not using that on this one. I used a kind of a large dotted pattern and made that whole strip texturized. Now I'm going in and adding some walnut stain and using kind of a damp baby wipe to pull off some of the color and then run the edges around. Now the other little piece of that you see over there, it's going to show up in a later project. I put all of those things when I'm doing something like that, and I put them back into the kit so that they're there for later. Now, one of the things that will bring all of this together is I'm using that yellow cardstock to kind of create a base. You're not going to see very much of it, but it will allow that yellow color to be used throughout the rest of it. Kind of gives a bounding box, if you will. And I'm only putting a little bit of adhesive in the middle of these because my intention is to go and stitch around them almost like that, like they were a quilted pattern. So now I can begin to get an idea of how things are going to lay out, and I'm doing just kind of visualizing some things, trying that quilted pattern up there and putting a tag. And I really like the tag. I'm going to use it for some journaling, but it was a little too bright to do my journaling on, so I'm taking some Picket Fence Distress Stain, and you can see that just by putting a layer or two of that over it, I don't lose the pattern, but it's much more muted against the original. So to kind of frame the tag, I also took another piece of this craft core and ran it through that same embossing folder, and I'm only going to use the top edge and the bottom edge, and I want it to be dimensional. I'm really going for as much visual dimension as I can here. So I'm going to stick the edges down with my ATG gun, but I'm going to use some dimensional tape to kind of lift the edge there in the center so it kind of looks like that torn edge is curling. Now I'm going to begin to use some of that washi tape and build some embellishment areas, building things that will draw the whole design together. I tend to use bits of 3 of washi tape and just to kind of pull things together. Now, I don't know, are you familiar with Gloobers? They are made by Cosmo Cricut, and they're just great for making those ribbon roses or whatever else. I'm going to use some of this zipper trim, and I usually get it in white because I can color it whatever color I want. And I wanted to use kind of a variegated between the pinks and the teals here, so that's what I did. After it dries, I go along and just snip it. If you're a seamstress, you know that that makes it easier to go around corners. That zipper binding is a little is just a little stiff to begin with, because it's holding those metal teeth. And so just by clipping it, you can get it to be a little more malleable um, and move around. These gloobers are great to work with. You just keep sticking your material down, and when you're done, you're going to have a sticky back to peel off and put it somewhere. Now, for the very last little bit, I did need to go ahead and use a little bit of my hot glue gun here just to make sure that that center stayed down, and I'm using that little heat tool accessory, the little pointy thing, instead of my finger. With with age comes wisdom, and I know that I don't have to like sear my fingers to be a true crafter. So I wanted to tie in the cherry um, theme, and I have these little vintage beads, I guess they are. So I took another yellow button, and I'm going to stack the bead on top of it, so that, because the center of that zipper rolled flower is kind of deep, and putting a little yellow in there was a good design element, but then also lifting that small cherry button up a little bit will make it cool as well. Now here's a couple of other things. I like using repetitive elements, and I got this little camera die, and it has all kinds. It has Polaroids and little Instamatics. It even has like an iPhone kind of thing. It's by Dynamics, and I'm putting a little bit of the Tim Holtz shiny mirror paper. I don't actually know, but it has a film on it, and I leave the film on until I'm done. And I've put a little bit of that film behind each of them, and now I'm going to make the Polaroid actually a Polaroid. So I cut a little piece of paper and then used a 3/4 inch punch to punch out a picture in a magazine, put it on there, and am going to have it coming out. I'm using my silver Sharpie to add just a little bit of detail to these die cuts, and I'm going to use 3 of them because I'll have 3 distinct places, and I can kind of work with that. Now you'll see that I've decided against doing that whole long strip of that paper there. I did like the element. I just felt like it wasn't working, and that a kind of a random stack of pattern papers actually worked better. I'll use more of that paper on another one. Now you can see here I'm just adding a little bit of repetition. I know I'm using the zipper trim in that flower down there, a little bit of the sequin waist underneath it, and I'm again mimicking that down here on the tag as well. And they're small details, but I think that the viewer, when they see it, it's going to give their eyes lots of places to feel comfortable and enjoy resting. And that's, to me, that's the element of good design, is not making the viewer kind of visually stumble and go, now why was that there? So I'm going to again repeat the washi tape up here, creating that third area of the triangle that I'm going to do a little bit of decorative work or embellishing. And I'm using the same 3. They're thick, they're thin, and they're different color elements. And my idea here is to put, I took that last little bit of the tag that I had embossed, and I cut out some leaves. Now you can see I'm pulling the sticky off of that glue bar. I love these things. I want to get more of them. You could probably create something similar with a sheet of double terrifically a sheet of that double stick tape and punching it out, but I just think they're brilliant. Now I'm going to use these labels again just to create another visual triangle. I'm going to use all 3 of those middle labels there that are kind of circular and about 1 inch around, and layer it on my embellishment area. It kind of gives me a place to put the camera, and again it gives the viewer's eye a place to rest. Now I love these thickers. I think they're called maple, and they're a little tall and skinny, but they were the right color, and so I'm just using a pen and outlining them. In real life, they show it better than they do actually here on the video. And the title of it is "We Didn't Grill, We Hasty Baked." The grill that you see there, my dad always called it a hasty bake. I think that was a brand name, and it's one of those things that, you know, even as an adult, I didn't really even know that they were called grills, because he would say, let's hasty bake this weekend. So I wanted to kind of document that for our family. And for all of the projects that I do with this particular kit, I'm going to use the stamp. There's so many great sayings. I'm not going to use the date stamp because frankly, it doesn't go back far enough. I'm the little girl in the lower left-hand corner. So I just took one of the sayings. I think Happy Day was it. And I'll use it on each of my projects somewhere. Again, I'm going to just add just a touch of visual triangle with these dots. And the last little bit of the triangle embellishment thing that I'm doing is I'm going to take some of these Cosmo Cricut tiny text stickers and find phrases that work for each of them for this particular layout and add them in. Again, the eye sees the three areas, the top left, the bottom left, over to the right, and then I added in a button next to each of them so that each time you see that, you know that it's part of the overall design. I hope that you will join me as we do this fun kit to completion. I'm going to put everything back into the brown paper bag along with the pictures I haven't used yet. And everything will be in one place for us to come back to the next time we want to work on a project. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you are having a very creative new year. I'll be back to share something again with you soon.